This presentation will cover protecting students from discrimination in Washington public schools and will be an overview of the discrimination and complaint procedures. This training provides a basic introduction to school employees' responsibilities under state and federal non-discrimination laws, identifying and reporting student-on-student discriminatory and sexual harassment, preventing discrimination in school programs, activities, and services, and discrimination complaint procedures. While many of the civil rights protections and complaint procedures discussed in this training also apply to employees, this training focuses on the rights of students and the responsibility of school staff to prevent and protect students from discrimination. While this training will not cover employment discrimination, you can learn more about your rights as an employee regarding the discrimination in the workplace by reviewing the district's non-discrimination and sexual harassment policies and procedures. You can also learn more about the protections against employment discrimination by visiting the Washington State Human Rights Commission's website or the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's website. All school districts and charter schools must provide students with equal access to all programs, activities, and services without discrimination. Discrimination is unfair or unequal treatment of a person or group because they are part of a defined group known as a protected class. In a school setting, discrimination can occur when a person or a group is treated differently or denied access to school programs or services because they are part of a protected class. Discrimination can occur when a school or district fails to accommodate a student's or employee's disability. Harassment, when it is based on a protected class, and sexual harassment can also be forms of discrimination. To be unlawful discrimination, harassment, or unfair treatment must be based on a protected class. A protected class is a group of people who share a common characteristic and are protected from discrimination by federal and state laws. Protected classes in Washington schools include sex, race and color, religion and creed, national origin, which can include the language that a person speaks, disability and the use of a service animal, sexual orientation, gender expression, gender identity, which includes transgender students and staff, veteran and military status, which generally refers to employment. Definitions: creed is defined as broadly and includes religion, observance, practice, and belief. National origin is a person's ethnicity, country of origin, or ancestry, which may include persons with limited English proficiency. Disability, the presence of a sensory, mental, or physical impairment that is medically cognizable or diagnosable, exists as a record or history, or is perceived to exist, whether or not it exists in fact. These include students covered under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. A service animal is an animal that is trained to do work or perform tasks for a person with a disability. Gender expression is a person's external expression of their own gender. Gender expression could also refer to the manner in which a person represents or expresses gender to others, often through behavior, clothing, hairstyles, activities, voice, or mannerisms. Gender identity is a person's internal sense of their own gender, male, female, both, neither, or gender fluid. Veteran or military status is a person who is a veteran as defined under RCW 41.04.007, or an active or reserve member in any branch of the armed forces of the United States. During this training, we will focus on two common types of discrimination that may impact students. The first is discriminatory harassment and sexual harassment. The second is discrimination in access to school programs, activities, and services. First, we will cover discriminatory and sexual harassment. Harassing conduct is a form of discrimination when the behavior is based on a student's protected class and creates a hostile environment. First, discriminatory harassment is based on a protected class. Let's refresh ourselves on the list of protected classes we covered earlier. These are sex, race, color, religion, creed, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, disability, use of a service animal, and veteran or military status. Next, it creates a hostile environment for the targeted student or other students. Example, some bystanders A hostile environment is created when conduct is so severe, persistent, or pervasive that it limits a student's ability to participate in or benefit from any of the student's school's programs and activities. Note that the harassment must be severe, persistent, or pervasive. The harassing conduct does not need to be all three. For example, one incident may be so severe that it alone creates a hostile environment. How might harassment limit a student's ability to participate in or benefit from a program or activity? Are their students' grades suffering because of the harassment? Is the student having difficulty concentrating? Has the student had to drop a class or change academic plans? Is the student feeling increased anxiety about coming to school? Is the student increasingly absent? Does the student feel unsafe at school, at recess, in their athletic program? Is the stress of the harassment impacting the student's relationship with friends, families, teachers, or peers? Is the student reluctant to participate in extracurricular activities or athletics outside of fear for harassment? As school staff, you may already be familiar with the school or district's harassment, intimidation, and bullying, or HIB, policy and procedure, which covers any student-on-student bullying. It is important to keep in mind that harassing conduct can be both bullying and discriminatory harassment. If harassing conduct is based on, related to, or motivated by any protected class, the district must respond and investigate under both procedures, HIB and discrimination. Let's review some of the differences between bullying under the HIB policy and discriminatory harassment. A key distinction between bullying and discriminatory harassment is what the conduct is based on or motivated by. HIB, bullying, can be based on any characteristic, including, for example, height or weight. Discriminatory harassment, that same type of behavior, can become a form of discrimination when it is based on a protected class. Example, sex, race, religion, sexual orientation. The school's response may differ depending on whether the behavior is bullying or is also discriminatory harassment. HIB, when addressing bullying, the school's response might be limited to disciplining the perpetrators. Discriminatory harassment. When addressing discriminatory harassment, however, the school's response must often be more systemic in nature and extend beyond disciplining the perpetrators. The school must take steps to stop the harassment, eliminate the hostile environment, prevent it from occurring, and remedy its effects on any students impacted. Two different district policies and procedures apply. HIB, the HIB policy and procedure, which provides for a building level complaint with a short investigation timeline. Discriminatory harassment, the sexual harassment and non-discrimination policies and procedures, which provide for a district level complaint with a longer investigation timeline, which can help uncover school climate and systemic issues. And differing district level coordinators may be involved. HIB is the HIB coordinator. Discriminatory harassment is the Civil Rights Coordinator, Title IX Coordinator for Sexual Harassment, Section 504 Coordinator for Disability Discrimination. Remember, if harassing conduct is based on, related to, or motivated by any protected class, the district must respond and investigate under both procedures, HIB and discrimination. Student-on-student sexual harassment is also a form of discriminatory harassment. Sexual harassment occurs when a student is subjected to unwelcome conduct or communication that is sexual in nature and that creates a hostile environment. Conduct is considered unwelcome if the student did not request or invite it, and considered the conduct to be undesirable or offensive. The age of the student, the nature of the conduct, and other relevant factors affect whether a student was capable of welcoming the sexual conduct from a peer. A student's submission to the conduct or failure to complain does not mean that the conduct was welcome. As an example, consider a situation where a female high school student willingly kisses a male student on one occasion. When the male student subsequently attempts to kiss her again, she objects, but he kisses her anyway. The subsequent kiss is considered to be unwelcome, even though the student welcomed the first kiss. Next, the conduct must be sexual in nature. This can include, for example, unwelcome touching, making sexual jokes, spreading rumors, or making suggestive remarks, pressuring a person for sexual favors, distributing sexually explicit texts, emails, or photos, physical violence, including rape and sexual assault. Next, the conduct creates a hostile environment for the targeted student or other students. Example would be bystanders. As we covered earlier in the presentation, a hostile environment is created when conduct is so severe, persistent, or pervasive that it affects a student's ability to participate in or benefit from the school's programs or activities. As public school employees, we have a duty to respond to discriminatory harassment and sexual harassment. If a school knows or should have known about discriminatory or sexual harassment, it must, first, investigate to determine what happened, and second, if the school finds that harassment has occurred, take prompt and effective steps to stop the harassment, eliminate the hostile environment for the targeted student and any other students impacted, prevent the harassment from recurring, and remedy the effects of the harassment on the targeted student and any other students impacted. The school must take these steps regardless of whether anyone has filed a complaint or asked the school to take action. When are we on notice? The school has notice if a responsible employee knew or in the exercise of reasonable care should have known about the harassment. Who is a responsible employee? A responsible employee includes any employee who has the authority to take action to redress discrimination, who has been given the duty of reporting incidents of discrimination or any other misconduct by students to the Civil Rights Title IX, Section 504 coordinator or other appropriate school designee, or whom a student could reasonably believe has this authority or duty. Whether an employee is a responsible employee will vary depending on factors such as the age and education level of the student, the type of position held by the employee, and consideration of both formal and informal school practices and procedures. As an example, it may be reasonable for an elementary school student to believe that a custodial staff member or cafeteria worker has the authority or responsibility to address student misconduct. First, let's look at when an employee is considered to have known about harassment. For example, staff hear about the conduct indirectly, such as through a news report or community gossip. A staff member witnesses the harassing conduct. A student or parent shares concerns about the principal, teachers, or other school staff. A student or parent files a complaint. Next, when should staff be aware of harassment, even if they didn't witness it directly or receive a complaint? Examples are harassing conduct is occurring during activities under staff supervision, such as during recess, in the classroom, or in the cafeteria. Students are referred for discipline for harassing conduct. Graffiti, such as racial epithets, in public areas such as restroom stalls or lockers. Harassing conduct is happening openly in the hallways or during school activities. If a student comes to you to share information about discrimination, including sexual harassment or sexual violence that they have experienced, there are a few helpful steps to remember so that you feel prepared. First, affirm the student's decision to share information with you. Second, inform the student of your role and obligations to report, of support services as applicable, and the district's prohibition on discrimination using age-appropriate language. Then, report to the Civil Rights Compliance Coordinator, Title IX Coordinator, or Section 504 Coordinator as appropriate. When affirming the student or parent's decision to share their experience with you, affirm them by listening without judgment and supporting them by responding to their disclosure appropriately. For example, I'm sorry you're going through this difficult time. I am so sorry to hear about your experience. And what would be helpful to you right now? Especially during an initial disclosure of an incident in which the students may have experienced trauma. School staff do not need to interview the student at the time of their disclosure. Generally speaking, the initial report is not the time to determine if what occurred is true, but to affirm the student in sharing the information and trusting the school staff to share their experience. Your most important role is to act as a bridge between the student and the school administrator or the civil rights coordinator. If you are a responsible employee, in addition to affirming, you should also inform the student of your role and reporting obligations. Being forthcoming about this with the student from the beginning helps them understand what will happen next, and that as a teacher or administrator, you are not betraying their trust by reporting up. For example, thanking you for coming in to me with this information. I want you to know that in my role as a teacher, I need to share what you told me with the principal, and I cannot keep it completely secret. It is also important to inform the student about the school's prohibition on discrimination and the support services available to the student. In age-appropriate terms, inform the student it is not okay for any student at the school to be treated differently based on their protected class, sex, race, national origin, or abilities. For parents or older students, explain that the district has a discrimination complaint procedure to ensure that concerns of discrimination are looked into and investigated and addressed. Provide a copy if you have it available. If not, either follow up to provide a copy or inform the compliance coordinator so that they may provide the procedure promptly. Also inform the student that the school has counseling or other support services that may be available to talk to. When possible, refer the student using the counselor's name and tell them what will happen next. Who should they tell if they would like to talk to a counselor, etc. School staff should promptly report the student's disclosure to the appropriate district level coordinator. Overall, if you are not sure how to respond to a student's report, it is all right to say something like, "What you're sharing is important, and I want to make sure I give you the right information. Can I talk with you again later today?" And then quickly contact the coordinator to get the right information to share with the student. Regardless of what it's labeled or what you perceive it to be, if harassment or bullying is based on a protected class, the school district must assess it for civil rights implications. The label used to describe an incident, example bullying, hazing, teasing, does not determine how the district should respond. Rather, the nature of the conduct itself must be assessed to determine if it is discriminatory or sexual harassment. Remember, even if the behavior is already covered under the district's bullying policy, the school district is responsible for taking prompt and appropriate action to investigate and address discriminatory and sexual harassment, which may require a more extensive investigation and additional remedies. If you suspect that a student is experiencing discriminatory or sexual harassment, please contact our compliance coordinators. In the beginning of the presentation, I shared that I would be focusing on two common types of discrimination that may impact students. Let's move on to discrimination in access to school programs, activities, and services. Each student must have equal access in any program, activity, or service the school offers. This includes academic programs, extracurricular activities, transportation, and athletics. We need to make sure our schools do not deny or limit any student's participation because of a student's sex, race, creed, religion, color, national origin, which includes a student's or parent's limited English proficiency, sexual orientation, gender expression, gender identity, disability, or use of a service animal. Some programs or activities have interest criteria. For example, many sports teams have a cut policy based on skill. Prerequisite and entrance criteria are allowable so long as the criteria are justified by the nature of the program or activity, are applied equally to all students, and are subject to modification when necessary to avoid discrimination. Schools may not, for example, categorically deny admission to a program because the student needs English language development services, special education, or health services. Here are just a few examples of how we can ensure that students have equal access to our programs and services. First, we must make sure our schools allow students to benefit from all programs, including highly capable programs, advanced placement, and career and technical education, regardless of race, sex, language, or disability. We must make sure our schools provide accommodations, aids, and services for students with disabilities when needed. We must make sure to administer discipline fairly and equitably. We must provide equitable athletic opportunities for girls and boys. And we must provide language services for English learners and parents with limited English proficiency. Because this training is only a brief introduction, you will not be going into detail in each of these topics. You can learn more about these topics and more on OSPI's Equity and Civil Rights webpage. If you have any questions or concerns about equal access to any programs, activities, of services in our school district, please contact our compliance coordinators. The final topic we will cover in this presentation is discrimination complaints. What does a discrimination complaint look like? It can be anything in writing, including by mail, email, fax, or hand-delivered. It can be sent to any school or district administrator, and it is anything that alleges discrimination or describes something that would be a violation of non-discrimination laws, rules, or guidelines. This includes any allegation of unfair treatment or harassment based on protected class. Anyone can file a complaint, including students, parents, employees, advocates, and community members. A note, a formal complaint does not need to include the word complaint. It must simply be in writing. What do you do if you receive a complaint? Report to the Civil Rights Coordinator immediately. The Civil Rights Coordinator will coordinate an investigation and must respond to the complaint within 30 calendar days. Next, make sure the complaint receives a copy of the complaint procedure so that they can understand the process. An additional context. Under WAC 39-190-065, when a district receives a complaint alleging discrimination, the coordinator must provide the complainant a copy of the district's discrimination complaint procedure and ensure that the district conducts a prompt and thorough investigation into the complaint. Once the district receives a complaint, it initiates the complaint procedure. The district has 30 days to, number 1, conduct an investigation. Number 2, complete an investigation report. And number 3, respond to the complainant with the results of the investigation and a corrective measure the district will take. These requirements are outlined in WAC 392-190-065. After the district's decision, the complainant can appeal the school district's decision to the school board. After the school board's decision, the complainant can file a complaint with OSPI. At any time, the complainant can also file a complaint with the U.S. Department of Education or the Washington State Human Rights Commission. For more information on any of these topics and more, please visit the OSPI Equity and Civil Rights Office website or the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights website.